Hey, how's it going today? We are getting ready to start a lesson on solving absolute value inequalities. And pretty soon here where we're at, the snow's going to be coming down, and there's going to be some snowmen being rolled up and put out in the middle of the front lawns or out in the middle of a field, or you never know. But, you know, snowmen, they kind of have a character of their own, have a little mind of their own, so they might be running around, they're hanging out. And one snowman might look over at the other snowman and say, it's kind of funny. I smell carrots too. If we look at this absolute value of x is greater than 6, what are some values we can use? Well, x could be 7 because the absolute value of 7 is greater than 6. X could be 500. X could be 6.1. X could be like 6.825 because the absolute value of all those numbers is going to be greater than 6. But remember, the absolute value of, like, say, -8. What's the absolute value of -8? Well, that's a +8, and that is greater than 6. Or we could have the absolute value of negative, like 6.25. That's still greater than 6, the absolute value of it. So if we look, basically, the positive and negative of any of these numbers plus all the other numbers that we haven't discussed could be a solution to the absolute value of x is greater than 6. And with the inequality, we're going to say the absolute value of x is greater than, I don't know what I'm writing on the board there. Let's go ahead and solve this. If the absolute value of x is greater than 6, our answer is going to be x has to be greater than 6 because that's all the positive numbers that we just discussed. All those positive numbers are going to be greater than 6. Or we could say x has to be less than -6. And that would be all those negative numbers that we just discussed. All those -8, -6.25, -500, all those numbers are less than -6. So here's your two answers. To solve this out, x has to be greater than 6, or x has to be less than -6. And that's kind of what we do here in this problem. N minus 4 has to be less than 1. The absolute value of n minus 4 has to be less than 1. Well, if we think about it, n minus 4 has to be less than 1. But also, n minus 4 could also be greater than -1. So basically, this way is rewritten without the absolute value in the problem, and this one is rewritten where you flip the inequality and change the number after the inequality to a negative number. And now we just solve those out. Add 4, add 4. N is less than 5. We're going to add 4. We're going to add 4. N will be greater than 3. And if we look here, the answer to this falls between 3 and 5. Those are the only numbers that we can plug in to the beginning of the problem and make that inequality true to make the left side less than 1. So there's our solution here. Let's look at this problem here. First, rewrite it without the absolute value in the problem. Second, write it where you flip the inequality and you change the number afterwards to a negative. And once we're at this step, just have two inequalities we can solve. Y is less than or equal to 9. Y is greater than or equal to negative 21. So if we look here, this one here, we can write it as, let's say, on the left side, let's rewrite that when we turn it around. 21 is less than or equal to y. Turned around. We got it turned around. There we go. And now, on this one over here, we're going to leave it the same. Y is less than or equal to 9. We have the y already. Less than or equal to 9. And so this one works out to be like that. This next one's going to be, yeah, this next one's just a little bit different here when you have your final answer. Let's go ahead and work this one out. H plus 10 is greater than or equal to 8. It's rewritten without the absolute value. H plus 10, and this time we're going to flip the inequality and change the number after to a negative. We should know how to solve this. H is greater than or equal to negative 2. H is less than or equal to negative 18. And now if we look here, let's come back to the previous problem. Let's say if we were wanting to graph this one, we would have like a closed dot at negative 21. We would have a closed dot at 9, and since y has to be greater than negative 21, it's going to be all the numbers to the right. And since y has to be less than 9, it's going to be all the numbers to the left. So these are the solutions between negative 21 and 9, including those two numbers, negative 21 and 9. This problem here has a little different answer because closed circle at negative 18, closed circle at negative 2, but now h has to be less than or equal to negative 18, so the value of h has to be less than negative 18 or equal to it. The value of h here has to be greater than or equal to negative 2, and these numbers to the right will be greater than negative 2. And so those are how those problems differ, and that's why on this one we will not put those together like we did in this answer in the previous problem. And next example here. The next example brings me to the next thought that I have is why do you think aliens do not eat clowns? Why do you think aliens do not eat clowns? Well, it's because they taste kind of funny. That's why. They taste kind of funny. This one here is it's just like well, when we solved absolute value equations, this is kind of like that, where we have to get the absolute value on the left side of the inequality all by itself. And we do that by subtracting 5 from both sides. So we're left with the absolute value of k minus 1 is greater than or equal to 7. K minus 1 is greater than or equal to 7. And so now you can solve this one here. I've just given you a few examples there. Go ahead and solve that one out. I will go ahead and pause the video. I'll work it out, and you can check your solution when I'm done. First off, rewrite it without the absolute value. Rewrite it, flipping the inequality, changing the number after the inequality to a negative. And solve. Add 1 to both sides of the inequality. So K is greater than or equal to 8. On the right, add 1 to both sides of the inequality. So K is less than or equal to negative 6. K has to be greater than negative 8. It also has to be, or it can be less than negative 6. This one's an or. Compound inequality. Next problem here. Add 7 to both sides, so that way we get the absolute value. Negative 2 plus 7 is 5. So we get the absolute value on the left side of the inequality all by itself. Go ahead and pause the video, work the rest of this out on your own, and check your solution when I'm finished. Looky here. We rewrite it without the absolute value in there. We rewrite it again by flipping the inequality and changing the number after to a negative. And let's add 3 to both sides. X is less than or equal to 8. Hey, kind of like the snowman I was talking about. Put a little top hat on him. A carrot for a nose. A stick out here. Look at him. I smell carrots too. That's funny. I smell carrots too. That's what he said. And moving on. X should be what? Greater than negative 2? Yeah. X is less than 8. X is greater than negative 2. Think about this. If it has to be less than 8, it has to be greater than negative 2. It has to meet both of those inequalities. So this one here is going to be an and compound inequality. Because like if we pick a number here on the left less than 8, say we pick negative 10, right? Because negative 10 is less than 8. But if we look, negative 10 is not greater than negative 2. And if we plug it back in, negative 10 minus 3 minus 7. Negative 10 minus 3 is negative 13. Absolute value of negative 13 is 13. And 13 minus 7 is 6. Is that less than negative 2? It is not less than negative 2. So negative 10 is not a solution here. So you have to meet, if you're picking an answer for these, it has to meet both of those. And one last problem. Go ahead and solve this one out on your own. One last example here. Solve the whole thing out on your own. Check your solution when I'm done. Or actually, check the solution when you're done. Okie dokie. We're going to subtract 1. The absolute value of f minus 6 is less than or equal to 7. Rewrite it without the inequality. Or I'm sorry, rewrite it without the absolute value. And rewrite it where you flip the inequality, change the number after to a negative. And solving this out. We're want to add 6 to both sides, so f is going to be less than or equal to 13. Same thing over here. We add 6 to both sides. F will be greater than or equal to -1. If f has to be less than 13 and it has to be greater than -1, we know that this is going to be a and in order to make this absolute value inequality to be true. So your two answers. F has to be less than or equal to 13, and it has to be greater than or equal to -1. Okay, well, I appreciate you tuning in and listening to this video, or watching the video. I hope it's helped out. And if you come up with those questions, the answers to the question about why there isn't mouse-flavored cat food, you come let me know.